show. I appreciate you tuning in for another brand new review. Don't forget, every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, I'm going to have a new interview, a new opinion piece, or some horror news for you to come and check out. But throughout the week, I'm still dropping countless reviews in the world of horror, whether it's movies, TV shows, games, books, whatever I'm checking out. You don't want to miss any of that, and the best way to stay on top of all the content I'm dropping is to get subscribed to my Linktree. You can do that by going to linktr.ee/T-Scary-Movie. If you get subscribed to my Linktree, that's going to give you access to the YouTube page for the video versions of the show, to your favorite podcasting platforms for the audio-only versions of the show, to my Letterboxd page for my written reviews and movie rankings throughout the year, to my TikTok page for my short horror content, including movie news and movie premieres, to my Twitch page for all of my horror gaming, including The Thing Remastered and Phasmophobia for the PSVR 2, and to my Fangoria shop page, where you can enjoy a 20% discount off anything in the Fangoria shop, including a yearly subscription to the physical magazine. Take advantage of that, folks. Hit that subscribe button, as the more followers I get, more content I can put out for all of you. And I got some great stuff there back in the archives. You can catch my interview that I did with author Tim Wagner, who wrote the novelizations of Ty West's trilogy of X, Pearl, and Maxine, amongst a lot of great other adaptations and original stories over the last few decades. That interview is live on my channel now. Go and check that one out here, folks. So what are we talking about tonight? Well, a few weeks ago, I was previewing some of the last bigger releases that we had coming up this year, and I got a chance to catch one of those releases just the other day. So tonight, we are talking the new Millennium thriller, Y2K. Yes, that's right, folks. And let's not waste any time. If you haven't seen the trailer, we're going to jump right on into this. Y2K tells the story of two friends, Eli and Danny, who are searching for the right thing to do with New Year's Eve 1999. When Eli finds out that his unrequited love crush, Laura, is going to be at one of the biggest parties of their school, they decide that it's time to get their cool on and go attend a New Year's Eve party. But unfortunately for them, when the clock strikes 12:00, all of the world's computers seemingly revolt when the Y2K bug becomes real. Can Eli, Laura, and Danny survive the start of this new millennium and get to graduation? Folks, that is Y2K. Now, Y2K is written and directed by SNL alum Kyle Mooney. Kyle Mooney was one of my absolute favorites when he was on the show. So seeing him progress from SNL to putting out his first horror film, that is exciting. He co-wrote the script with Evan Winter, and it seems very, very clear that the two of these guys have a very big appreciation for the late 90s, the early 2000s, because the immersion of this project is really well done. You know, in the last couple of months, I've highlighted a bit of time travel horror on the show, and I've talked about how that's one thing that if you get wrong, it really can take you out of it. That if we're going back to a certain time period, you really got to get the immersion well done on it, because otherwise it's just extremely distracting from everything else that's going on. And not every film has really been that successful. You know, Time Cut that I talked about not too long ago was a film that also went back to the early to mid 2000s, and that one wasn't as successful as giving us the proper immersion that I would have been really, really familiar with, because that's my time, that's my age right there. So I was hoping very much walking into Y2K that Mooney would be able to very much capture that, and so much of that is accurate. AOL, Real Player, Nintendo 64, That 70s Show, Tybo, Janine Lundmunder. There's so much that they got right, including obviously the music in this as well. That immersion was very, very easy on this. Taking a small town, because that's very much what this seems to be, and not really giving us much of a worldview definitely helps out a lot with it. You know, it's probably a little too much to handle if we're dealing with like a big city or a lot of like going around everywhere to really keep you in the time frame that they're in. But because of the focus of this film, you never feel that you're anywhere else except for the late 90s. So that was really, really well done. They also put together a really good cast for this film as well too. You know, Jaden Martell, who stars as Eli, was actually in one of my favorite films earlier this year, Arcadian, the one with Nick Cage, to where, again, it's post-apocalyptic, and this dad and their two sons are living in this world where these monsters come out at night, and they have to make sure they're staying protected. Really great film, very much recommended. If you haven't seen it, it's called Arcadian. But, you know, it's interesting because between a film like Arcadian and then a film like It, he's really coming into his own with this like certain archetype of character, and it's one of those things to where I very much hope I get a chance to see Jaden Martell in more horror films moving forward, because it's very clear the personality that he puts out on screen is the typical archetype of somebody that we can't help but root for in these kind of films, and Y2K is definitely no different. You're rooting for Eli the entire time, even though he can be a bit of a dick at points in time, but that goes along with the idea of the film that I think Kyle Mooney and Evan Winter really set out to make here, which I'll talk about here in just a second. Julian Dennison, you know, I'm gonna be real about this. 10 minutes into the film, I really wasn't feeling it, and it took me back to Deadpool 2, and it's like, I don't get it. I still don't get the guy at all. And then we got probably 15 minutes into the film, and then I realized, oh yeah, that's right, because he absolutely grows on you. And you know, I'm not gonna lie and say I've seen him in anything outside of Deadpool 2 or Godzilla vs. Kong. There's only two things I've seen the guy in. But it is true, though, is that the longer that he's on screen, the more that you really start to enjoy his presence, honestly. And especially in a film like this, to where he is the comic relief to Jaden Martell's straight man. And he's trying to be the really good friend, but he's also playing the role of this friend who is going to say a lot of stupid shit, not realizing the embarrassment that comes with that. And just in that role, to where he's trying to be so genuine and he's really trying to be a good friend to Eli, that's where you see Dennison really shine as an actor, honestly. And I really did enjoy the relationship that Eli and Danny had in this film. And then there's Laura, Rachel Zegler, who I honestly thought had done a lot more in Hollywood before going and checking out like her filmography. She really hasn't done that much. And it's interesting because you would think that in the roles that we've seen her in, that she's been doing this for a while. And she translates very well as the popular Laura, who actually has some nerd qualities to her as well, too. And this kind of brings it all back around to the idea that I think that Kyle Mooney and Evan Winter made themselves a coming-of-age film. You know, I would very much compare Y2K to a film I've talked about on the show before, Warm Bodies, which was a John Hughes film just wrapped up in this zombie movie. And it's really well done. It's also Romeo and Juliet, obviously. But that's what Y2K really feels like, because we spend so much of the runtime before, you know, we get to the party and it turns midnight and then everything starts going apeshit. We spend so much of this time focusing on Eli and Danny and Danny's relationship as friends, and Eli talking about his crush on Laura and hoping to make something happen with that, and them finding out about this party and deciding to go, and this is going to be the night of their lives, and this pact that hilariously involves a condom, and like there's all these things about it. It's like these are the hallmarks of a coming of age story, and they really do knock that out of the park. And you know, it's interesting because most horror, I feel like you're writing specifically for horror. Like, you need it to be maybe not scary, but the point is you're trying to disturb somebody with that. But there are those films to where we look at, and it's kind of like, if you remove the horror elements, would that movie still work? Because obviously, if we're taking a film that's about zombies, you take the zombies out, is that really going to work the way that you want it to work? Obviously. But in a film like this, to where the focus isn't actually even that these computers and machines are revolting, it's really about Eli finally having the courage to admit his unrequited love for Laura and see where that takes them. You know, the movie works really well without those horror elements. I thought this was a really well done love story, honestly. And again, all these staples of these like really great coming of age films we saw in the 80s and 90s seem to be right here present in Y2K. And that might be the reason why the film doesn't necessarily keep up the quality once the horror elements start getting introduced. Now, I talked about the cast, our main cast there, but we also have a few other folks who you absolutely should recognize from so many other projects, including Lachlan Watson, who was just recently in Chucky as Glenn and Glinda. You have Eduardo Franco from Stranger Things. You have the kid Leroy. Mason Gooding shows up. Kyle Mooney actually does play a role in here that seems very, very much like an SNL character, and that's a good thing. And then there's a surprisingly interesting role for Limp Bizkit frontman Fred Durst in this as well. That Fred Durst has ended up in two of my favorite horror films of the year. This and I Saw the TV Glow. Man, y'all put Fred Durst in more horror films, because that dude can actually bring it when you give him something juicy to go with. And I know he didn't really have a juicy role in I Saw the TV Glow, but it was an impactful role in that one. And believe it or not, because I Saw the TV Glow is a better movie. It is a better movie than this, but I do think his role in Y2K is better than the role in I Saw the TV Glow, and I can't spoil it at all. You have to see it to believe it. But this, like the additional cast members kind of help really round it out again as this coming of age story, because, you know, Mason Gooding is playing like the ex-boyfriend who's clearly better looking and more confident and just has all these things that Jaden Martell's Eli is not, and, you know, can seem like very much a foil. And Eduardo Franco and Lachlan Watson are playing you know, like the burner crew, who are all the rejects, and like nothing's cool and you can't be cool. And again, something very common that we see in these coming of age high school flicks as well. And everything is just fitting that mold so well. So again, when the new millennium hits and the robots and the machines start going crazy and start trying to revolt and take revenge amongst the humans, there's a lot of depth, there's a lot of carnage. And when everything starts at the party, that is some of the best parts of the film, seeing these kids really get killed in horrific ways. Like, they do not hold back on what happens to a number of these kids in this film. Like, it is bloody for sure. But then after that, it kind of loses a little bit of that edge. You know, it's almost like it turns a bit into This Is the End. You know, the Jonah Hill, James Franco, Seth Rogen, Jay Baruchel movie. To where, like, the moment that the apocalypse starts occurring in that film, like, there's all this carnage, like, right away, and then there's, like, a lull for, like, the next, like, 30, 40 minutes or so, where it's them all infighting and the comedic stuff happening and everything. And that film does a really good job with it, and I'm not saying that Y2K doesn't, but there is a little bit in terms of a lack of laughs, like, after the initial carnage goes down, before we get to, like, our next high, which is kind of around the time where we see Fred Durst in the film, honestly. I'm not saying that the film doesn't work, because it definitely does. And again, I think that that's the problem, is that it maybe doesn't balance the horror and the, like, you know, the other side of that, which I've said it so many times now, the coming of age story. It doesn't really balance these elements so well. It's like 65% coming of age, 35% horror. And the horror that's there, some of that is really played for laughs, which I thought the movie was fucking hilarious, honestly. You know, I've seen some of the reviews coming out about it, and it's like, all right, like, these are some really, really great setups that they have, especially anything surrounding Kyle Mooney's character, Garrett, is so good. But it is a legitimately funny movie, even if the horror elements just don't work out too well for it. So, if you want a good flashback to the late 90s, early 2000s, that actually does a really good job of replicating that time. You want some good jokes, but you also get a bloody tale that actually has a very cute story behind it. Y2K is the film that you definitely got to go out and see. Let me know in the comment section if you check it out. If you're a big fan of Kyle Mooney, let me know what kind of sketches he did on SNL in the comment section that you enjoyed as well too. But that's going to do it tonight, folks. Appreciate you tuning in. My name is T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.